In this video, we're going to look at the Chapter 3 version of the Future Value Calculator. So our Future Value Calculator, we have an index.html file, a futurevalue.css file, and a futurevalue.javascript file, .js. So index file, pretty typical of what we've seen so far. It's just a single heading with the script linked in the HTML code. The CSS is the same CSS formatting that we've seen for the body, H1, and labels in our previous examples. And the real magic happens in the futurevalue.js JavaScript. So let's look at that. Start out with useStrict, and we set a variable, let investment equal 0. And now we're going to ask in a small loop. It's a do-while loop. And we're prompting the user to enter the investment amount inside the do loop. So this will automatically run, and then we'll test the result of what the user typed. If the user did not type a number, they typed something incorrectly, it's going to repeat. So this do-while loop is checking that the user, that we were successfully able to parse this as a float, and that it is some type of number that got parsed. And if it's not, is not a number, will ring true, and the do loop will continue. So we have a little bit of input validation. The user has to type a good number in order for this to complete. And it will keep asking them until they do type a proper number. It's going to default to putting $10,000 into that prompt box. So when we run it, we can just hit enter, or we can type our own numbers if we want to. All right, and then we do the same thing for the interest rate. We set the interest rate to 0, and we prompt the user to enter an interest rate. We're giving them a default of 7.5% here. But then we're doing the same check. When we parse the float, did it parse? Is the rate set to something? Is rate set to a number? If it's not a number, repeat the loop. When we repeat the loop until the user actually sticks in a number. And then third section, just like the first two, we have a loop that continually asks for the number of years, which is defaulted to 10, and we continually ask the user for the number of years. If it's not a number, the loop repeats. If it is a number, we continue on down here, and then we set a value called future value, which is going to be the result of this calculation ultimately, and we're going to start out with it equal to the investment amount that the user typed in. Okay. And then we have an example of a for loop. We initialize the counter variable for the for loop, set to 1, and it's going to count up till we hit the number of years. So in example 10, this for loop is going to run 10 times. It's going to count from 1 to 10, and each time the loop executes, it's going to increase I by 1. And then the loop body is right here, and the only thing it does is calculates the amount of interest for that year and adds it onto the current future value. Then it repeats, and it goes to year 2, calculates the amount of interest for the second year, which because of compounded interest will be slightly higher. Future value is higher, you'll get a little bit more interest the second year. That gets added onto the future value, and that repeats 10 times until we know what has happened to that value of that account at the end of 10 years. And then down here, we're writing to the document, here's how much you invested. Here's the interest rate that you typed in. Here's the number of years you typed in. And then finally, we print the future value that we calculated, rounded to 2 decimal places. Each of these things inside a paragraph that gets written to the HTML document. Let's go ahead and run this and take a look at it. And to run it, we'll just open our index.html file in our default browser. And it says enter the investment amount, and it defaulted to 10,000. So I'm just going to say okay. Interest rate, we said 7.5 is the default, so we'll just take that. Number of years is 10, so we'll take that amount. And then it runs through that loop lightning fast, calculates the future value in 10 years at 7.5%. On $10,000, it will be worth $20,610.32. All right. I want to do one other thing. I want to show you some troubleshooting tools, and I also want to look at the example of this with the for loop so we can actually watch this for loop operate using some of the troubleshooting tools that are built in to Google Chrome. So I'm going to go out here, and the easiest way to get into the troubleshooting tools is to click F12. Actually, no, I'm going to stop this video, and I am going to do this in the next video, because in chapter 5 we're going to have a troubleshooting chapter, and I want to reuse this video. So I'm going to do the troubleshooting in a separate video coming up right after this.